Okay. Hi everyone again. Good morning, good evening. I'm going to start from sharing my screen and I will show agenda. But today, if I'm not mistaken, we're supposed to focus on UI UX topics. And I saw one topic added by Regina. And Regina, do you want to take over and explain?
So yeah, Sarah, Jade, and Bo from Red Hat, they looked at the feedback that we had received, and they came back with some questions that they had regarding them. I can take them here. 1 second. I'll post them right here. Maybe we can discuss them here. Okay, so this is what they kind of came up with as stuff that they saw happening. So they saw that RBAC came up a lot. So who are we trying to keep out of certain areas, and for what purposes? Yeah. So we can, if we want to start with that one, or we can just go over all of them if there's not specific answers for all of them.
Yeah, I think we can do it. We can go through it and at least, add answers and save them in notes.
Yeah, okay.
And I can take first one. I can answer RBAC. And I also recall that it was mentioned multiple times in feedback. So there is a reason to have RBAC. We want to protect. So Argo CD is supposed to be multi-tenant. So we have users who are not supposed to be admins and should be restricted in what they can do. And so far, we make zero effort to reflect RBAC restrictions in UI. So basically, every possible button is shown to everyone, and that's a known issue. And I feel like we just never prioritized it. And now next blocker is we don't really know what is the best way to implement it. And one common mistake is to just hide buttons for people who are not supposed to see them. I know it's maybe a bad idea. So basically, it might confuse users even more. And I guess we need some guidance on how it can be done better.
Okay. Sarah Jane or Bo, do you have clarification on that? Do you have any more questions regarding this point?
I guess the question is there a guideline about how how users should be informed that action is forbidden for him or not forbidden, or is it like case by case and there is no single rule for everyone?
I don't think there's a one size fits all rule. Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple. And sometimes you want them to see the button, maybe with a tooltip or something, so they understand or learn about what it is they're not seeing. Maybe it's something they can graduate into or get access eventually. Sometimes you really do not want them to see the button or see the link or whatever, because they really have no business ever in the life cycle of their usage ever using that link or that button or whatever. So I think, you kind of have to think through your goals for all the things that might be shown or hidden, and think through what they might do with that now and in the future. So not an easy answer, I'm afraid.
Okay, and I have a feeling we kind of, we have cases where we might want to hide a button. For example, non-admins not supposed to even know there is way to customize Argo CD, and we can kind of just hide links that navigates to a section for non-admins.
Yep.
And at the same time, what about other users who? So the most not problematic, the most the piece of UI that needs this polishing the most is Argo CD, application details page. This is where most of UI elements are located. And in this case, I feel like, the same type of users use that page. And is there any kind of rule of thumb? Like, do you think it's okay to just maybe disable the button if users don't have access to the action of that button, and just have a tooltip that explains that, sorry, you need this and these permissions?
That could work. It might put some burden on the admin or whoever controls it, because if they see that, they might say, oh, well, this is just something, excuse me, I could ask for. Excuse me, I could just request permission for it. And maybe that is the case, or maybe not. So that could work in that, if that is the case. If it's something that they really truly are not likely to ever have access to, maybe it's worth considering hiding it entirely, just so they're not aware that that's even an option.
I understood. Yeah. So basically, we should look out for for buttons. I might be wrong, but my feeling is that most of the buttons on our application details page are going to be, user may or may not have access, or may get access eventually. Maybe one or two buttons that are strictly related to admins, but I doubt it. But yeah, so it will simplify implementation a lot if we just have this rule of thumb and basically, go for disabling plus tooltip for most of them. And if there is a question, then we can just,
And the other thing too is if somebody really is interested in whatever functionality would be provided by that button, even if they don't see the button, they're likely to Google for it, right? They're going to see, does Argo CD do this thing? And they'll find documentation and realize that it is possible. So it's not like, if they're really, really interested in doing whatever that thing is, they'll find out, whether it exists and try to work around it. So, that's something else to consider is are you truly hiding it if you're not showing it to them?
What currently happens if they try to access something that they're not able to?
They see error message, and it's kind of about a message that bubbles up from the, I think, bottom right screen, the corner of the screen. And often that message is hard to read because it's basically a server-side error, so it is wrapped in. It starts the same, and then somewhere in the middle they're going to see. Okay, and it's not really detailed. It's just a generic. You don't have permission to do that error.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know that kind of. It's not okay. It's related to our bug. So in most cases, user needs to be a part of some group, and that user, this is what user wants to know. Like, for example, user is trying to sync application and realize he doesn't have permission. The next question he or she has, okay, which group should I be in to get that permission? And yeah, so I guess maybe Jean, if you are taking notes, maybe I feel like we should do something about that too. Maybe tooltip should have information about which group potentially gives permission for, to execute that action.
Is there currently anything in the UI that shows what group you're part of?
Yes. If you navigate to, so we have user profile page, and user can navigate to that page and see list of groups he belongs to. And we basically created that page for that reason. So every time we get a question from a user, we ask him to go to that page and send us list of groups. And then we tell them, okay, see, you have to be in that group, and these are your groups. Talk to your admin to ask, ask him to add you to a required group.
Okay.
I just made it's basically I kind of, it's based on support experience of Argo CD users. If we could automate it as part of this effort, it will help.
Okay.
So I was trying to say that the tooltip that hides that button in case it's not available to a user also should have information about how user can get access to the button.
Would that be available to the admin would the tooltip be available to the admin to change, excuse me, the text of it pretty easily if they wanted to, you know, put a specific name or
I was
contact?
thinking programmatically, you know, like, so the thing is, Argo CD admin doesn't really know how to, I mean, Argo CD admin knows, but he cannot give permission. So Argo CD admins typically configure RBAC rules, and they're just saying users of that group can do that, but they don't control who belongs to that group, and that information is somewhere in, you know, in like maybe GitHub settings or lab settings, and so Argo CD admin can just tell, go talk to maybe your team lead and ask him to add you into GitHub or
into that group.
Yeah. So,
got it.
And that it's really easy to get information about which group you have to be in to get access to that to the action. But this is that support burden. Users keep asking, what do I do? We try to document it, but we still get this question all the time.
Yep.
Are we good on this question? Should we move on?
Okay.
You know, I had one more thought on the RBAC. I just would mention it, that another thing we run into that isn't related to sort of the buttons on a screen, but if you have like a shared screen that's, you know, different roles are going to access that screen, sometimes maybe the resources are either not available or they're only available to certain, or they're only editable. So we even have like, would recommend maybe like boilerplate, like when there's nothing there, or, I mean, it's just stuff we run up against where we call it like, it would be like an empty message, or so you may start to run into those things as well, or that may come up.
It happened, I spoke with several users. I think it happened less frequently with Argo CD because I feel like typically people tend to open read-only access to everyone because it's okay to let your team members to view infrastructure, and usually Argo CD is behind firewall. But in some cases, I spoke with few users and they complained that they navigate to Argo CD UI and then see nothing, and it's due to RBAC. So RBAC is right now works this way. It kind of, it's like a hidden filter. When every time you open list page, and then list API will filter out everything you don't have access to.
Yep.
So, and I don't really know how yet. I understand what you're saying. I have no idea yet how it can be improved, like how. And we do have generic kind of empty state widget, which shows you a little icon and explanation that, hey, you don't see anything, and it may be because of a filter. So try to either reset filter. It doesn't talk about RBAC. Maybe we can simply add this, you know, one more hint and explain that you are part of N groups, and probably none of those groups has access to an application. What do you think? Is it sufficient? Like, would it? And to make it clear, I'm talking about this widget. So we have this one Argo CD, and imagine if I put, so this widget kind of trying to supposed to help what is happening. Yeah. Okay, so it's, and basically one more sentence here about RBAC and some instructions would improve it.
I mean, the only thing is if it's like an edge case, RBAC, this is nice and clean and simple. So you don't want to turn it, you know, you want to make sure that like the, you know, the most likely one is what we're instructing them to kind of look for is to fix the empty state. That's my only concern about lumping everything in. So I guess you can just kind of figure that out in different scenarios.
Yeah, so we'll need to think how to distinguish RBAC versus just no applications available. Right now, this filter is kind of trying to be smart. So we won't show clear filters unless you specify a filter. Yeah, and then for RBAC, at least I would just take a note that it's good to think about the solution. Maybe we could have an API that explicitly says we hide something from you because of RBAC, and then UI will have a clear, hint that says, because you don't have access to everything, you don't see something here. Go talk to administrator. So, all right. I guess we can move to the next topic, to observability.
Yeah, so observability, someone mentioned the pod, group by node view. What's the hunger for a broad view across everything? What are they looking for or interested in seeing when they do that?
I can tell what I know about that. So I suspect that people are talking about cluster observability, kind of. It's a feature that we talked about for a long time. Basically, Argo CD watches the whole cluster, no matter how many namespaces in the cluster you manage. Argo CD have to get all the information about the cluster, and that's why we kind of keep hearing that users saying, "Okay, show us that information." And basically, we were thinking that one day maybe, in addition to applications, we can have namespaces tab, and the tab will be almost same as so it's not a tab, a page, a namespace list page. It should be almost the same as application list page, but except instead of applications, you would see namespaces, and then you can click on the namespace and basically see all the resources in that namespace and so on and so forth. So, and I feel like I'm not sure if it's purely UX question. Basically, we have not done it yet because it's like really diverging. Basically, it's Argo CD is focused on GitOps use case 100%. Plus, we're trying to show kind of useful information just along the way, because we monitor all application resources. It makes sense to show everything related to the application resources, like the div state and so on and so forth. So, and namespaces, even though we collected information, but it's really like it's basically, it would transform Argo CD into mostly monitoring tool plus GitOps features. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was only one person I saw who mentioned it specifically in that thread on GitHub about the feedback, but that is something that I have heard from some folks I've talked to in the context of doing OpenShift research, is that they don't necessarily think in the cluster view. They are much more focused on the nodes and the pods. Like that's where the majority of their focus is. So they're kind of looking more at how can I see across everything, but at that level, not like, at a cluster level, but more down in the weeds at the kind of the node level. So I guess I was just curious if that's something that you guys have heard too, or if this was just kind of a unique.
Yeah, I think I was trying to say that we've heard it too. And
okay, yeah, but it sounds like in the context of namespaces.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I feel like I'm kind of describing my experience mostly, but I'm not sure if others do the same. But because I use Argo CD UI often, I kind of get used to it. And that's why sometimes if I just do something in Kubernetes, I want to see it in Argo CD UI. And right now, only way to see it in UI is to try to put it into Git repo, and then UI will visualize it. So it's kind of, I see why people might want to just use Argo CD UI just to see what's in the cluster, not necessarily managed by Argo CD. My suspicion is that that's what people are talking about here. And if someone is, and then you might have different users. Like cluster admins, they would be interested to group it by node and then just see what's in my node, like what exactly is running on the node, and and then they might be interested in kind of finding resources that created pod for that node and so on.
Yeah. I think you make a really good point, though, that it is a little bit of a slippery slope. That, if you add in observability of everything, then you've created a whole other tool.
The good thing about, it's like it's a slippery slope, but I feel like we've already slipped. We already collect the data to show that. So it's a matter of I feel like it's a matter of commitment. Like if we have interest from contributors and people kind of ready to invest time, I just know that it's like a never end. If we go for it, it will never stop. We will get first MVP, and then we'll get more requests and more, and I don't think it will bloat Argo CD a lot, but definitely doesn't make sense to even start unless we are ready to invest several months into it.
Right, that's right.
Okay. So should we move on to the next question?
Yes, I think, yeah.
Okay. So scale, only one person mentions how many apps they're dealing with, which is 100 plus. And I know that many of Argo CD users have large amounts of applications. Would it be good to get a sense of the scale that the UI has to handle for everything? Number of namespaces, pods, clusters, how long names are generally?
Yeah, getting that kind of detail helps you plan how the UI can accommodate larger numbers of things. I was just kind of curious if we had a sense. It sounds like there are a lot of folks in the same boat with a lot of applications. I think it's just good to have that information available to you when you do make design decisions, so you can plan for how to accommodate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I will. I'm not sure if I catch the question right. So some numbers that we know of is I know that people have thousands of applications. It could be up to like the highest number I heard is 6,000 plus. Argo CD and UI is kind of still alive. I think it's challenging, but and application name can be extremely long. And the reason is Argo CD application names have to be unique, and that's why people come up with conventions. So basically, it's typically every name. You cannot put it into any scope, and you have to prefix it with someone. And sometimes it's like prefixed and another prefix, and then finally the real name. And we were forced to kind of think about it. So list page kind of designed to show long names right now. Yeah, and it's not easy to fix. I guess if we could basically introduce some way to put names into a scope, but we just technically cannot do it because application is a CRD, it lives in Kubernetes, and Kubernetes requires every name of that CRD to be unique in the namespace.
Right, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe I was proposing a little more of a fact-finding mission, to understand how people are
And I feel
naming things, and whether they're accommodating the tool or whether they're accommodating their own requirements.
I feel like they're accommodating the tool.
Yeah.
And the same story in application. Okay, I cannot speak for everyone. Intuit users, they have long resource names as well. So within the application, we have resources. Resources don't have to be, named. Don't have to have extremely long names, but sometimes they do. And I just observed it, and I feel like this is the area where we really need help. So application details page is not designed to visualize large applications. They have to be improved. Nodes view or pods view, the most recent pods view was an attempt to kind of handle one aspect. So pods view simplify showing application that have a lot of pods. But if you have, in addition to pods, a lot of config maps, a lot of RBAC rules, they still have to go back to a resource tree view, and that tree view just needs to be improved. Just to clarify, what I'm trying to explain is that. So it is that Argo CD manages Argo CD, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 7 config maps, and then 7, or like a lot of basically it's you have to scroll. Okay, this is more realistic. You have to scroll a lot, and I know that this view, it's not just a flat, the list of these resources is not flat. It has grouping, internal grouping. And I'm kind of trying to give you a hint in case you will, think about the problem later. But for example, every resource has a label, and let me show that label. Yeah. So it can be like, it has name, part, and basically maybe to group it even better, we could introduce more labels, but that's one thing that we can use for grouping. We could group these elements by label. Yeah, so they're logical groups.
Yeah.
And in some other cases, people have resources from different namespaces in one application. So you can see extremely big application, but you can group them by namespaces. So yeah, and it's a lot of random ideas how it can be improved, but we never sat and kind of seriously think about it.
Right. Yep.
That's
Okay. Are we good with this question? Should we move on?
yes. And do you want to take over, Regina, so you don't ask me? And like, or you find?
No, it's okay. This is the last question.
Okay.
So what's how many users use CLI versus UI, and do you know the breakdown for it, and why would people choose one over the other?
I know that it's mostly feeling. I would not. So basically, most of users, I believe, use UI, and most of humans use UI, but CLI is still needed because CLI is used to integrate Argo CD with CI systems. Yeah, so it's kind of CLI is needed, but it's not to view results. I have a feeling if Jan was in that meeting, he would say, no, I like CLI more, because there are a set of users who kind of just prefer CLI for the sake of CLI. And yeah, I think it's just a good question. I cannot even guess,
Yeah.
It could be 80% use UI and 20 CLI, or I might be completely wrong. I don't know. I wanted to, someone in that meeting, what do you guys think? My bet is that more users use UI, but I cannot prove it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of room for both. I think there's going to be people who prefer one to the other, and that's just natural. But I think what I'm most curious about is what about their preference makes it their preference? Is it speed? Is it muscle memory? Is it, they can see things more clearly in the UI? Like I'm just always curious about that.
I suspect UI is more popular because it's it lets you reach as more users. And so, like hardcore users who really manage deployments, they use CLI as well. So they took time to install it, configure, connect to Argo CD, and so they benefit from both. But with UI, you can kind of involve even more users, in the organizations. Maybe, managers use Argo CD as a dashboard. They don't care about CLI. They just, click the link and.
That's what I was thinking. Like one thing that sometimes we, if you don't have parity between the two interfaces, and the UI can't have all the features, you cherry pick the ones that maybe this more beginner or less sophisticated user would need. And the really more complex ones, if you can't replicate in the UI, you have to pick. So that's a thing we think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think developer type of user use CLI more because it's a lot quicker sometimes. Especially like people coming from Kubernetes, they do a lot of YAMLs, stuff like that. They probably prefer UI. But yeah, for most user, UI of this thing, it's more comfortable for most.
Does your CLI have a name, or do you just call it the CLI?
I think we just call it the CLI.
Okay.
We have 2 CLIs now, but I think
Okay, sometimes they have a name. Okay, just checking.
Another point that drives using CLI is some actions you can only do using CLI. So for example, Argo CD repo add. So when you're our cluster, so when you're adding a remote cluster, I don't think you can do that from the UI. You have to do it from the CLI.
yes. The reason is CLI has access to local files, and it can you can replicate it in UI, but it's just simpler to download CLI and run it because CLI will, it will figure out what file should be used and uploads it for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I heard literally yesterday from a workflow team that their users kind of sometimes think that CLI maybe slows down them. So like Argo workflows started as CLI only, and then UI UI for a long time was simply read-only dashboard, and recently UI kind of catch up, and now it has, I think, more features than CLI. But for historical reasons, basically, team now has to maintain this feature parity in CLI and UI. Maybe in Argo CD we will kind of be in the same situation. Like often, we always have several tickets that says, "Oh, you can do it. You can do something in UI only, and cannot do it in CLI," and that's why. Someone sent this pull request to add more flags to the CLI.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay. I think that's it then.
Awesome. I feel like it was mostly, a questionnaire, but one thing, I think some of your notes are kind of answers already. I like that. I'm inspired now to work on hiding buttons and, and showing through. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but at least in our case, in case of Intuit, this might save, a couple hours of support every week to administrator of Argo CD. So, impact kind of potentially big if we just disable buttons and give user a hint what he should do, he should do to get access, instead of right now, these users have to go and ask Argo CD administrator just to get answer that, hey, go to someone else and talk to him.
Yep. Clarity is always the best way. And then they can decide, maybe they, read the, the explanation of why they don't have it. And they're like, oh, I get that. I get why I don't have that. And then, that's the end of it, which saves us a little time too. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there is some time savings here, which would be cool to see happen.
So thank you.
Oh, thank you for your time. It was really helpful to hear all that.
All right. I think this, I believe, is from Devon, right?
Yeah,
It's not it's not related to UX, but I think we ran out of UX topics, so we can.
that's nice. I was patiently waiting for that. Right. So this issue talks about it's a bit of user experience, how the user is waiting for the app to sync while all they want to do is just delete the app. So I added the video recording as well, where you can see that the sync is going on for a good 3 or 4 minutes, and you can't even abort the process.
I think I have a simple answer. I fixed it recently into the 2.0, but maybe if you can validate it. But I ran into the same situation. I had an application, I clicked delete button, but it was syncing. And basically I stuck because UI didn't give you a chance to do anything in this case. You must wait for sync to complete and then delete. So I made a change on this page. So I'll take advantage that I'm sharing screen right now. So right now, if you click delete, so if you click sync, and then maybe delete application using CLI, then in 1.8 version, you would see deleting here. And I just changed priority so that if you're deleting and syncing at the same time, sync will show up, it will take priority. So, and then if you click on sync, you have then terminate button, you click terminate, and then you see deleting, and basically it will, because you terminated, delete will happen immediately. Like, does it, are we talking about the same problem or?
Yeah, I think as long as the user can delete the app when the sync is taking like 3 or 4 minutes, if they have an option whether to terminate or even if they could wait, like if the user is acknowledging, yes, I would like to wait for the sync to finish, that could be an option as well. But yeah, I can validate it using 2.1 and then comment on the issue.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah,
so just kind of to repeat, user in 2.0, user has option to, now user will see that sync is in progress, and then user can click on sync and there is terminate button. And we can terminate.
Cool, thank you.
Nice, thank you. Hopefully -1 issue. We're getting dangerously close to 1,000. Okay, and we have one more proposal. It's okay. Sorry, there was one more UX topic, the user input form enhancements.
Hey guys, so I am working in a UiPath right now, and we have we use Argo CD to deploy it onto the customer premises. We actually deploy UiPath application suites onto a customer premises, and we use Argo CD widely for accepting some of the user customers input in a form of parameters, and those are fed to our Helm charts, which can further go ahead and configure UiPath application onto the premises, right? So for that, we are facing some of the challenges, and we want to see whether it's possible to enhance those user inputs. So, right. So a few of them which I have already made a note of it. The first one is a tree view, or where I can or a way to group the related parameters together, right? So right now we deploy around 40 to 50 application right now. Once we have and there's a lot of fields which requires parameters. So instead of showing all the parameters together in one single long form, we wanted to see if the user can collapse form and can group it accordingly.
And
right?
it's Helm specific, right? It's kind of
it's a Helm specific. So So maybe the logical grouping that we could think of is based on the parameter that path that we are expecting user to input. For example, global dot I'm just giving an example, like global dot user input dot xyz, then global dot user input dot abc. So xyz and abc is a way to I can collapse it under the same name, like global dot user input, something like that, right? So that would be help. That would be a great help for us to actually show all the related fields in a proper way.
Yeah, I feel like it's yeah, I cannot even argue. It's like definitely it should help. I think we just didn't know that it's so important. You know, at least we didn't know there is user who kind of depend on it so much. So I feel like it deserves a ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So other enhancement that we could think of, it's associate display name maybe with some of the fields. So the field that we expose it to the customers might not be very much intuitive for them to understand what's actual meaning behind this field is, and what is the meaning of this particular field. So we want to see if we can associate some display name or some logical name to that input field, which can convey some meaningful some meaningful thing to the user, so that it can be very easier for them to identify. So just to give you an example, maybe I want to accept a certificate. Let's say the certificate field. I'm just giving an example. So instead of saying that, giving the whole variable name in which I am accepting a certificate, I can ask user that this is a domain certificate that I'm accepting from you. So just the display name would be like domain certificate instead of whole parameter or something, like some way to identify that. Or maybe, yeah.
Yes.
Or maybe, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I just wanted to say that the challenge here is that we don't, like, Argo has no database, so it's hard to maintain any mapping, but we don't have like, we already have some information within the Helm chart itself. It's not display name, it's like we can use comments next to that field as a tooltip, maybe. Like
okay, so yeah, so the next thing I was coming on to the tooltip, so I can use comments to show a tooltip, right? So
yeah, that's maybe it should not be too hard to do. Yeah, and domain name, it's like domain name is just, we cannot expect like, who is going to configure that mapping between this display name, or maybe I can ask you, like, does it work?
So what we were thinking of, maybe in a Helm chart, we will provide the mapping of the actual variable and the name that I wanted to show it to the customers or the user, right? And whatever the mapping I provide, that can be rendered instead of the actual variable name over there.
So, for example, like, if we just use comments, but we just maybe use some convention that if comment looks like field name, comma, colon, some value, then it's a display name. Yeah, so I'm just curious, like, how many other users wants it, and like how important that feature is. Or at least it maybe deserves research. I'm surprised Helm doesn't have it yet. I'm pretty sure that Argo CD is not the only tool that visualizes Helm parameters, but I never heard about display names for Helm parameters.
Yeah, fair enough. So for us, if we can show the tooltip with the help of the comments, I think for now we should be good. Yeah, because we are able to communicate clearly to the customer what this field is for and for what use.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I agree with both cases, and kind of a tooltip using comments is easier because it's it's that data is just there and someone just have to write a code. And for display names, I would start from research and see if Helm community has something, and then last resort is try to invent something our own and introduce like some way to record this mapping between names and display names.
Thank you. The third thing, the third topic that I have is there any way that I can mask a password? So we may want to accept a connection string as for connecting to a particular database as a parameter from a customer, and we got a feedback from from a customer that they are not very comfortable providing the connection string in a form of a plain text, and they wanted to somehow mask that input, right? So
yeah, I can answer. I know that this is, so to do that, so right now Argo CD does no secret management. And basically it's not hiding any secrets except a few that we must hide. Basically we hide cluster credentials, repo credentials, and we support Kubernetes secret. So if we opt in and start, if we try to hide additional information, that means in pretty much in everywhere in the whole Argo CD, we will need to insert a text that, so we'll need to insert code that will try to hide, user management secrets from the logs, from API responses, from UI. So what I'm trying to say, it's not just UI. It's it's like, if we do it, then we have to build kind of full-fledged secret management, and I think it's in scope of Argo CD, but it's a big commitment. That's why, and I feel like we kind of, I have never heard anyone arguing if it's a good thing or not. Everyone thinks it's a good thing, but we need, a set of contributors who is ready to work on it, and once we add it, that means we need to support it forever. So yeah, that's the current state. And people ask for, imagine if you have ability in Argo CD to mark a Helm field as a secret, then that value that you marked as a secret, you can view it in logs, you can view it in generated manifests, you can view it in Argo CD details page. And yeah, so to hide that, you kind of, a lot of work needed. Yeah, so it's just, I think we know how to do it, we just need people to do it. And I believe we already have a ticket, and maybe, I was hoping that either this meeting, okay, next meeting, we were going to go through priorities for next milestone. I encourage you to maybe mention that one more time. And the goal of, I guess, next meeting will be to figure out which tickets maintainers are going to work on during next, I forgot how many weeks, 4 weeks. Plus, we want to find tickets that are important for the community and kind of advertise them by adding into milestone and add a label that this is something community really want, and external contributors, encouraged to contribute. Yeah, and I think hopefully one day we will get enough people who wants to work on security management for Argo CD, and then, then it will be possible.
thank you. Okay, yeah, sure. Next item that I have is we were thinking of some way to provide a validation for each and every field. So if I am if means can there be any way that any of the input provided by the customer, we can validate it with the help of maybe, I'm just thinking out loud, maybe with the help of callback functions or maybe some regex. I'm not sure. So yeah, but some way to provide a validation to each field that we.
Is it as well Helm specific or not?
Yeah, so again, it will be, we will be taking input from a user on the parameters page. So yeah, that's again the Helm specific, right?
I feel like it's almost same as display name. So it's like additional.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And yeah, if you, like if user could maybe in comments specify a regex, not user, chart maintainer, if maintainer could put some metadata in comments, and it could be display name validation, then Argo CD can just read it and apply it.
Okay.
I feel like I would check it the same way. I would see if Helm already has something, and maybe we're just not taking advantage from it.
Fine, then yeah, good that let me know. I'll try exploring that part.
Awesome.
Okay.
Maybe if you like to make it easy, can you maybe create a ticket for that and explain your use case? Because I never thought about it this way. So as I understand, you're saying you have a Helm chart and you kind of and then you ask end users to fill in values in that Helm chart, and Argo CD is kind of user interface is the way to enter values. Is it right?
Yes, yes. So okay, so just to give you a small idea, what we do is we publish a Helm chart to deploy our various application on customer premises. So we want customer to provide input to configure those applications. So maybe like provide a domain name. So if I'm configuring a cluster, Kubernetes cluster onto their machine, and I want to access it via the external a domain name. So maybe I'll accept, I'll provide a field where user can enter a domain name associated on which they wanted to access their application, right? The application that we are deploying, and that domain name will be used internally in our microservices to do various jobs, right? So maybe that is one of the places I might want to have a proper validation check. So maybe that kind of thing I was thinking.
Yeah, I think please create a ticket. I think
yeah,
this is not so easy to do. It's not a big commitment, and if maintainers seeing that it's clearly a big impact, then I think we should just do it because it sounds like it's a big impact on.
Sure, yeah, I'll create a ticket for that. And maybe the last topic that I have right now here is there a way that I can disable a few of the buttons that I don't want a customer to use it? So I'm just giving an example, like maybe I don't want user to delete an application. So maybe a delete button. This is now again outside of Helm. It is no more related to Helm. Maybe a delete button that says the delete app. Maybe I can disable that for customer. I don't want the customer to.
Actually, you can do it already. You can configure. You can use Arbug to disable. Don't give them permission to delete. And I think as of now, delete button still will be there, but at least it won't work. And we just discuss a way to improve it. So I guess we will, in next version, we'll either hide delete or disable delete button.
Awesome. I think, that's it from my side.
Thank you.
I'll create a ticket for a few of the items and then let's see how it goes.
Yeah, and I guess another is just for you, so you can help us. Right now, we're working on better config management plugins support. And I feel like the perfect state would be that we will migrate native Helm support to this enhanced config management plugin support. An idea that users should be able to configure plugin parameters And I know that we didn't mention validation and display names in that plugin support yet. And, you know, if you open, let me just do it right now. Yeah, we have a pull request that describes enhanced plugin management from Shama. And you can just comment on that PR and mention that you have a use case where you want a ability to have metadata for plugin parameters. You know, metadata like display name and validation. I'm pretty sure it's not in the doc yet. So let me just put it into chat. And document describes backend changes and kind of looking for, and UI is the next step. And I think Sham will appreciate if you mention that for UI, we will need display name for parameters and validation.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we just ran out of time. It's exactly 1 hour. Okay. And any other topics, people? Do you want to discuss something? Or I guess, okay, we ran out of time, so please add the topics that you want to discuss to the next meeting.
One last thing, there's a note at the top of next meeting topics that says, don't forget to change GitHub
Thank you.
discussions moderator.
Yes, my bad. I know that we did it 2 weeks ago. And since then, I think Jan was supposed to be a moderator, and I guess he just stopped doing it for, you know, after 1 week. So, and Jonathan, do you mind to be the next one because you are next in the list? I don't know if you already did it. That's why I'm asking.
I was the one that did it before you. I'm happy to do it, but I was the one that did it before you.
Okay, so I'm going to, okay, but in this case, I'm just going to pick the next person, and it's going to be Shama, I guess. Yeah, so I will double check with her, but I think for now, she is the moderator for next week. Thanks for reminding. Every time
No problem.
if I think about it. Okay, I think that's it then. So see you again next week.
Thank you.